Welcome back to the show, everyone. We're here today on our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday, where the topic of the day is going to be internal versus external fat loss factors. So one of the biggest things that I like to share people is that if you are looking to transform your body in terms of being able to burn more body fat or become more fat adapted, as people say, and I'll be doing a follow-up show on that kind of fat loss myth in a few weeks, is to understand that there are things that you can do externally, meaning that you put into your body to help you burn more body fat that are actually quite effective and they do work. But then there's the other part to the equation of the internal factors that are going to enable you to not just burn more body fat today, but to boost your metabolism for years to come. So if someone asks me, how can I burn body fat? How can I lose weight? I say to them, what is the goal here? Because honestly, there are sometimes two different goals. So I've had many a celebrity come to me to say, hey, how are we going to? Because that's what I did for a good decade of my life. From like 2000 to 2010, body transformation, nutrition, exercise science, anti-inflammatory nutrition, like we were doing all of these different things. And at high levels, whatever people wanted, we could do. We were talking about intermittent fasting and anti-inflammatory nutrition plans and all this, like before it was the cool thing to do. But it wasn't just me. I wasn't the only one. I certainly didn't make this up. We were just, again, for a lot of people in the industry, you already know what's cutting edge, right? We already know that. If you're part of the community that knows about sauna, that knows about cold exposure, that knows about binaural beats, that knows about these things, well, you're already ahead of the curve. You might think it's like, oh, well, we've been talking about this for years. Yeah, 100%. But it's still not mainstream, right? It's like mainstream might be in like another 5 years. So what I share with people is this: to lose 5 pounds just for a week to get ready for a wedding, a photo shoot, or whatever. I mean, again, that's some people's goal. It's not my job to judge. I don't come into this and say, oh, well, you shouldn't do that or you should do that. No, my job is to help people achieve their goal in the healthiest way possible, right? But if your goal is like, well, I'm 35 pounds overweight, I want to lose the weight, I've tried a bunch of different things, some of them have worked, some of them haven't. The ones that worked, I end up gaining the weight back. I say, okay, well, this is a different story. Let's do this the healthy way. Let's not only help you lose that 35 pounds over the next, let's say, 12 to 16 weeks, let's help you do it in a way that's sustainable and that's going to boost your metabolism at the same time so that you don't need to starve yourself or over-exercise. Because in the short term, yeah, eating less and exercising more will work. It works to a point, and then it stops working, right? I mean, that's the truth. Or you need to exercise more, you need to eat even less. I mean, that is an equation that I do not think that most people should participate in, because it is, to me, a fool's game to be able to continue to drop your calories while increasing your movement, and it creates essentially a catabolic or depleted environment inside your body. So what you don't see is that you're missing a lot of the micronutrients that you need, and you're beginning to break down greater and greater, which affects your organ function, your eyesight, your brain, hormones, and much more. I did a show on that. Let's see where it was. On episode 2237, if you want to check out that show, you're welcome to. It's called Moving Beyond Macros or something like that. It was about macros, and that was 2237. Why don't I do this? I will link up all the research for you and the podcast at today's episode 2252. So if you go to stephencabral.com/2252, we will link all those there for you in the research. Now, the reason for today's topic was that I got a great house call. So on the weekends, I answer people's questions. I call them the Cabral house calls if you're new to the show. And someone asked about a herb called gynostemma or gynostemma. And it's used a lot in Ayurvedic and in traditional Chinese medicine, and it can be used for fat loss. Oftentimes it's used for blood sugar regulation, but it can be used as a metabolic booster as well. And so I'm not against those. I'm really not. And in terms of like, we have a product called Daily Glucose Support. I use different herbs in there besides cinnamon and cinnamon and vanadol sulfate or vanadium in order to help people stabilize blood sugar. So I'm an advocate of that. I certainly am. But the question about blood sugar, just like the question about burning body fat, is, okay, let's say that we take this product, this herb, ginostemma, or in traditional Chinese medicine is called I think it's called jiaoguan. And I apologize and I did a long internship in Beijing in China as well. So I apologize, but certainly never quite picked up Mandarin or Chinese. But it is a very, very popular herb, often mistaken. You can just be walking around. It's just a 5-leaf, pretty benign looking herb hanging out there, but it has a lot of metabolic effects. So the way I look at it is like this, though. Let's say you have an herb, even something that's well studied like that, or you have more of a marketing based one like raspberry ketones, right? Maybe you saw the raspberry ketone craze a bunch of years back, and there's always Garcinia cambogia. There's always going to be a bunch of ones out there. And it's not like they don't have their merit. When you look at the science, like, oh, it can, in clinical studies, it seems to burn an extra 1 to 2 pounds or so per month for subjects. Like, okay, well, it's not phenomenal, but certainly, yeah, that'll help burn some body fat. The question I ask is this, though. You're taking an outside herb, which I do believe in. Again, I believe in herbs. Like I certainly believe in ashwagandha and phosphoserine, which is more of an extract. But, I believe in these things. The problem is this. Is that herb fixing a fundamental root cause imbalance? And the answer is no. So even if you're taking great herbs for blood sugar regulation, cinnamon would be considered an herb, right? Why is your blood sugar dysregulated in the first place? That's always my question, right? So if you are an integrative health practitioner, your job is to ask why. So we'll use the herbs in the short term, 12 to 16 weeks. But what's going on under the surface that you can't metabolize sugar, glucose in your bloodstream, right? And we've done many shows on that, so I'm not going to start to break that down. But the same goes for fat loss. Okay, yes, certainly. If your metabolic rate is 1,800 calories a day and you're eating 2,500, I can see why you're not losing weight. But if your metabolic rate's 1,800 calories a day or so, and you're eating 1,800 calories a day and you're moving your body more days than not, you're walking 10,000 steps a day and you're not losing weight. Well, okay. So do we add in these exogenous herbs? That's the external, right? Outside of us, exogenous. And we start to lose some body fat. We say, oh, this is great. The problem is we have to stay on them then forever because it's an exogenous source that we never figured out why the root cause for our low metabolism was. So what I want to share with you is that there's a difference between external use of herbs, which can be great, but you have to, at the same time while using them, also work the internal. So there's 5 main ways that we do this if we want to look at fat loss for internal. The first one is the regulation, and I have previous podcasts on this, so I can link them up today as well. The first one is overall, and it's my opinion, we need to look first to what's going on with the stress and cortisol in the body. Because if we're going to talk about hormones, and that can include, and we'll talk about the others in a minute, like testosterone and DHEA and estrogen, progesterone, we have to understand is that oftentimes they become dysregulated because of stress. So if they become dysregulated because of stress, should we work on those hormones first, or should we work on the stress? So we certainly want to work on cortisol. That's a big one. And oftentimes what we find is that people may not necessarily be high in cortisol first thing in the morning, but they are in the evening, and it affects their sleep. So fact number 2 is we need to work on a person's sleep. Now, if cortisol is affecting the sleep, of course, then we want to do something, yes, like adrenal soothe, to help push them back into a normal diurnal rhythm. But maybe they're working on the computer too late at night. Maybe they're watching the evening news. Maybe they're just stimulating their brain too much. Maybe they're exposed to too much blue light. Maybe there's a lack of melatonin, right? So, okay, we might use then the sleep health protocol, again, maybe for 6 to 12 weeks to reset the normal circadian rhythm, which is basically up during light hours and working, and then down during dark hours and not working. That's how we want to move towards with our life. Because if we don't balance sleep, then we can't optimize body fat burning, which it's, again, when you look at the overnight ratio of body fat burning, it's about 85% tapping into body fat. That's an important time from 7 at night to 7 in the morning to really, again, I know you're not sleeping the whole time, but hopefully you're at rest, you're seated, you're relaxed for the most part. So that's an important factor to look at. But we also know that those people with the most disturbed sleep or the least amount of sleep have the highest fasting glucose levels, at least upon waking. That's an important factor to look at. That can be from elevated blood sugar during the evening or higher stress upon waking, which is called the cortisol awakening response, higher stress. So those are 2 factors we want to look at. The third one is oftentimes tied in with thyroid. So thyroid is an overall look at your metabolism. Low thyroid means not a lot of calories burning. Low thyroid also means, though, poor circulation. poor thermogenesis. And heat does help burn more calories throughout the day, because you're not always looking at, oh, how many calories can I burn in 30 minutes for a workout? How many calories can I burn in 60 minutes? That's short-sighted. The goal should be, how many calories can I burn in 24 hours by increasing my overall basal metabolic rate, my overall metabolism. Just think metabolism. Well, if your thyroid is slow because of many factors, nutritional deficiencies, cortisol, etc., that's an important factor to look at. And thermogenesis has to do with the overall circulation of the body. If there's not enough heat, there's less calorie burning just in general. So it's important to boost that thermogenic-based effect. We mentioned blood sugar, but I want to get a little bit deeper into this, because if you're in a chronic state of elevated blood sugar, meaning above the norm, it's not that you can't tap into body fat. That's also a misnomer in this industry. It's just that you store body fat at a much higher rate, because you have all of this excess energy, which is glucose, and it's not being used because your metabolism's low or you're not exercising. And so it is going to be turned into body fat. Now, that body fat can still be utilized, but it's a revolving door. And the tough thing about continuing to put on more body fat is that you raise internal estrogen levels, endogenous estrogen levels, and you raise cortisol levels the more adipose tissue you have. That's, again, clinically proven. So now it makes it even more difficult to lose body weight, which is not just body fat, because you're retaining more water. You have a whole lot more inflammation, especially around the midsection. And this is very, very common. Cortisol around the midsection and around the hips, estrogen. So these are important factors to look at. The other one that I would like to touch on is the overall inflammatory processes of your body. If you are overall inflamed, you're going to be retaining more fluid. You're going to most likely be burning less body fat. Your body's not balanced. This can have to do with liver. This can have to do with a lot of other factors. Again, it could be heavy metals. It could be gut issues. It could be mold. There could be any sorts of stealth pathogens that's creating this inflammation. The interesting thing is that we just spoke about thermogenesis and thyroid, cortisol, sleep. We talked about blood sugar. We talked about overall toxicity and hormones. None of those specifically have to say, oh, well, that's why someone gained weight. Because we didn't talk about overeating and we didn't talk about undermoving. What we talked about was the actual foundation for how to boost metabolism, or the inverse, to slow it. So when we are helping people lose weight, we are helping them to do what? Improve cortisol, stress, thyroid and hormones, sleep, thermogenesis, glucose balance. That's essentially what we are doing. And then because of that, we are now optimizing their cellular function. We're boosting their metabolism to the tune of a couple hundred calories per day. And now they lose weight without doing anything different. That's amazing, right? So now we've got them walking 10,000 steps a day. Then we start to move into some cardio to help balance blood sugar to a greater degree. Then we start to move into some body weight training, then some weight training. The next thing they know, they're doing sprints. They're doing all sorts of great things, right? And they are naturally then, by following that methodology, not doing anything extra that they don't need to. Because as they're about to plateau, well, they're just increasing their output because they now have more energy and they don't need to decrease calories then as a result. So they're eating a normal amount of calories from healthy food. They're not starving themselves, and they're naturally burning more body fat. I don't want to say becoming fat adapted because, again, that's a misnomer that I'll talk more about in the future. So today's show is really about understanding the difference between external fat burners. And there's nothing wrong with using, again, in our Fatlocity-based product, we use Capsamax and other clinically proven herbs to help burn more body fat. But we're doing that at the same time while rebalancing the foundation of metabolism. So when you look inside of a product like Fatlocity, you're saying, what does it do? Well, it is the first 24-hour fat-burning system. Why? It helps with sleeping cortisol at night. In the morning, it's helping with thyroid and hormones. It's using things like Capsamax and other innovative herbal extracts to actually boost metabolism while we're resetting that foundational metabolism over a course of about 6 to 12 weeks. So you have to understand is that there's nothing wrong with using external-based herbs. But if you do not fix the external systems that dictate health, yes, health, not just fat loss, being healthy means that you are not gaining weight. And I say that with sensitivity, and I understand that. But I just want people to know that our weight is a marker of health as well. Because if we are, I'm not talking about 10, 20 pounds overweight. I'm talking about if we're 30 pounds plus overweight, well, we definitely have more inflammation. We definitely have imbalanced hormones. By definition, we do. Because if they were balanced, we'd be at our healthy body weight. And I'm not talking that means six-pack abs and super thin. That is not what I'm saying. We have different body types. We need to respect that. Ectomorphs, mesomorphs, endomorphs, kapha, pitta, vata, right? We need to respect that. I have different shows on that as well. And you can find and you understand your own Ayurvedic dosha or somatotype as well. But I don't want us to begin to understand or believe ever that dramatically decreasing your calories or increasing your exercise or taking external-based stimulants is going to be the long-term answer. It's not. It's going to leave you worse off. So my recommendation is we can do some of the things that will help you in the short term, but let's also look to those long-term metabolic benefits. Hopefully this was helpful. I will link everything up today at stephencabral.com/2252 for any research studies that we find pertinent, previous podcasts. I can't link up Fatlocity, but you can certainly learn more about the system we use just by going to stephencabral.com/Fatlocity, and you'll certainly be able to find it. Take care, everyone. Have an amazing day.